Miller-Dwan Foundation and our speaker, Chelsey Harju. Thank you for spending time with us. I am Tracy Marciniak. I'm the president of the Miller-Dwan Foundation, and I'm delighted you've joined us today to learn about the power of dialectical behavior therapy skills, or DBT skills for short. DBT skills are life-changing skills when used consistently over time. They quite literally change your brain, but in a good way. Originally developed by Marshall Linehan, DBT skills training is the primary treatment modality used with kids at Amberwing. But DBT skills are not just for kids. They can help anyone of any age, whether you are struggling with a mental illness or not. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to cover a couple of logistical items. We're going to keep everyone on mute for the majority of the session. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. However, feel free to post your questions in the chat during the presentation, and we will get to them at the end. The Miller-Dwan Foundation, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, is a 501c3 independent public charity with the goal of improving health for the people of our region. And we're excited to offer this webinar for you. As the creators and owners of Solvay Hospice House and Amberwing Center for Youth and Family Wellbeing, as well as the charitable foundation for Polinsky Medical Rehabilitation Center and the former Miller-Dwan Medical Center, which is now part of Essentia Health, we take pride in creating new care opportunities for people throughout their lifespan. We are also proud to support our community by offering free webinars like this that feature timely and useful topics geared towards education and overall wellness. Today, you're lucky to be joined by our speaker, Chelsey Harju. Chelsey is an LICSW and has been a psychotherapist at Amberwing since it opened in 2013. She received her Master's of Social Work from the University of Minnesota in Duluth in 2008. Chelsey has also participated in intensive dialectical behavior therapy training from the Treatment Implementation Collaborative and is a certified DBT and DBTC, which means DBT for children, clinician. She also participated in mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR training from the Center for Mindfulness and the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Ms. Harju is passionate about DBT and is committed to sharing it with our community in as many ways as possible. She has trained several of our local school districts and is in the process of creating content for a DBT video series as a collaboration between Amberwing and Miller-Dwan Foundation. Chelsey and her husband have 2 children, ages 2 and 4, and she does not hesitate to admit the impact DBT has had on her relationships and her own mental well-being. Chelsey, go ahead.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, I'm certainly happy to be here. I am going to be sharing, it really is one of my passions to share DBT with the world. And so I was thrilled to have this opportunity to do this. So I'm going to just jump right into it. I've got a slideshow here that I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to hope that you guys can see this as I get it up. All right. Does everyone see that? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay. I see. Okay. Thanks, Kathy. You're the first person on my screen, so that's who I can see. So yes, I have been at Amberwing for almost 8 years now. At Amberwing, so we treat children, and we use primarily dialectical behavior therapy. And I think the reason I'm so passionate about it is 2 reasons. One, the research really supports it. So this works, DBT really works. And the second thing that I can tell you is that I see it working every day with the kids that we work with. And like Tracy said, I'm pretty passionate about how it's changed my life. DBT, and I think, therapy in general isn't necessarily for people who are struggling with mental illness. DBT, it includes a wide variety of different therapeutic techniques, but the biggest part that we're going to talk about today are our coping skills. So the idea behind the coping skills is that if you are struggling, or if somebody that you know is struggling, it may be because they don't necessarily have the skills to manage their emotions. And so that's the idea that we have here at Amberwing. We want to give the kids the skills that maybe they don't have. And even though I'm doing this primarily with children, I can tell you that a lot of adults also don't have these skills. Up until recently, when we started doing this, and that I know of, it's not happening a lot of different places, but up until recently, there's not a way to learn this. There aren't classes in school that you learn how to handle your emotions. And yet it's so important. We all are needing this. We all need to struggle with, or we all will struggle with our emotions, and we need to be able to have those coping skills to manage them so that we can lead effective lives, so that we can be productive in relationships, in careers, with our families. And so I am passionate about it for that reason. So today, obviously, so DBT is huge. It's taken me years to kind of learn what I have about it. Our kids that come through our program, they actually learn all of the DBT skills, and it takes 3 weeks. So I have, 45 minutes. So I had to be pretty selective about what I was going to teach you today. So I really focused in on what I think is at the core of DBT skills and what I think would be useful for a wide variety of people. So I'm starting here. So this is, when I'm teaching this to parents, this is probably the most important thing that we teach. And it's an awareness of what state of mind you are in. And so we say that there are 3 states of mind, that at any given time, we are in one of these 3 states of mind. So you can see this this is their Venn diagram to explain these 3 states of mind. All of us right now are in one of these 3 states of mind. Likely, we were probably mostly in wise mind, but we don't know. So I'm going to start by talking about emotion mind, which really I think is probably the easiest one for people to understand because it's so intense and strong that we often remember when we've been in emotion mind. So emotion mind is that place where we feel really intense emotions and we act on them. So what we want to happen is we feel an emotion, we think it through, and then we act. Emotion mind eliminates that middle part of it. So emotion mind is saying, if I feel angry, I am going to do the first thing that comes to my mind. It may be I am so angry that I'm going to punch a hole in the wall. I am so angry that I'm going to think about and say like the meanest thing that I've ever said to you. You can ask my husband, that's what I tend to do when I'm in emotion mind and I'm angry. For some people, they might totally shut down. With other emotions like sadness, for instance, emotion mind tells us to get stuck in that sadness. And when we get stuck in that sadness for a period of time, it can lead to depression. And so words like rage, impulsivity, depression, acting out in our kids. So when our kids are acting out, that's often emotion mind. Hyperactivity, aggression, avoidance. So fear is a big one, right? Our fear tells us really strongly to get out of our situation or to avoid the thing that we're scared of. And what we know about emotions, I always say that emotions love themselves. Emotions want to grow bigger in our brain. And the reason for that is because it keeps us safe. So if we feel fear, our fear is like a fire alarm going off in our brain. And when we're in emotion mind, the only thing that we can hear is that fire alarm. The only thing we can hear is that fear telling us, get out, get out, get out. And so that's why it's really actually very difficult to overcome that. It's really difficult for somebody who struggles with anxiety to get out of that because that emotion is there to keep us safe, but it's running wild. It's out of control. And so we have to find ways to let our brain know and let that emotion know that we're okay. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So emotion mind is just simply, we feel an emotion, we act on it. It can be positive emotions or what some people say is positive emotions. So, I think about if you've been in love and it's kind of the beginning of a romantic relationship. Generally, that is emotion mind. we aren't thinking through maybe some of the red flags. We are just jumping in head first because that is what our emotion tells us to do. We are happy, we are excited, we are in love, right? There might be some lust, things like that, that's telling us, who cares? Let's jump in head first and fall in love. If you've ever been with like a 5-year-old on their birthday and they have to wait for presents and maybe they've been hyped up on some cake, right? So that is emotion mind, when they're just so excited that pretty soon they're getting in trouble and they're doing all these things that they shouldn't be doing, and you're like taking away their birthday from them because they're being so naughty. So kind of an example of where sometimes emotion mind is okay, but generally emotion mind is where we're getting in trouble. This is where we are getting in arguments with people, and we say things we don't mean. We do things that we normally wouldn't do, and that later we feel ashamed of or embarrassed of. And so we want to find ways to not only help people understand their emotion mind, but to be able to get out of their emotion mind. So that is that. And then on the other side of it, the flip side of it, we have reasonable mind. And that's the exact opposite. So that is where we are shutting down our emotions and we are only focused on our thoughts. We are only focused on things like what's right and wrong. We're focused on the facts and we're focused on potential consequences of our actions. This is where the shoulds come in, right? I should just do this. I shouldn't feel this way. We're using a lot of logic and we're focused on things like fairness. So this is where lovely Judge Judy, although I might argue she's an emotion mind sometimes too, but I think, the reasonable mind is kind of like the judge in our head telling us what's right and wrong and what we should and shouldn't do. The dinosaur, I don't know. I just thought that was cute. So that's why I have that. But reasonable mind, it seems like kind of a good thing. And sometimes it can be. So we want to be in reasonable mind when we're, for instance, taking a test. When we are, doing things that we just need to get done, that we need to focus on facts and all of that. Maybe our emotions aren't necessarily helpful to us. When we are in emotion mind, we need to kind of harness the reasonable mind part of us and try and ask, our reasonable mind, what's right and wrong here? What do we need to be doing? The problem with reasonable mind is it can be pretty invalidating. So if we are not paying attention to our emotions, right, we're telling ourselves that our emotions don't matter, and our emotions very much do matter. They do tell us some important things that we need to know. And ultimately, sometimes if we're ignoring our emotions or ignoring other people's emotions, we're telling them that they are not important, or we're telling us that we are not, ourselves aren't important. So we want to be able to listen to our emotions. So that is the problem with the reasonable mind. So when we put them both together, we get wise mind. And wise mind is that place that we strive to be in as much as possible. So this is where we are very aware of our emotions. I think one of the huge tricks that we teach kids is just to identify their emotion mind. If we can get a kid to say, I'm in emotion mind, right? We've kind of maybe just won the battle. That might really just set us down on kind of that downward roller coaster of, all right, now we got this. Because now we're recognizing that we are separate from our emotions and that we don't have to act on them. It's both and. So that's where, and I'm not going to get into this, but that's where the dialectical thinking comes. It's not necessarily you're right and I'm wrong or vice versa. It's that part of what you're saying is right and part of what I'm saying is right. We have our own truths. We are both right. So we try and use language like both and. We're in control, right? So I always tell kids, just because you have an intense emotion doesn't mean you are in emotion mind. You may be in wise mind and still have really, really intense anger, for example, as long as you are in control of your behavior. As long as you can say, yes, I feel angry, and yes, I feel like hitting somebody. And the reasonable mind comes in and says, I know if I do that, I'm going to get in trouble and I'm just going to feel bad about it and I'm going to look like an idiot, right? And so being in control is all about wise mind. Wise mind is saying, yes, I can have an emotion. We want to have an emotion in wise mind and be aware of that. Mindfulness is a huge part of what we teach our kids here. It's a huge part of DBT. And so being mindful really for me is just all about our own awareness, our awareness of our internal thoughts and urges, and also an awareness of what's going on inside of us. And ultimately an ability to control the way that we act and not just kind of be on autopilot. And then being willing. So, when we're in emotion mind, we are pretty, what we call willful. We don't, it's like the hardest thing. When I tell kids like, okay, when you're in emotion mind, right? Let me see your willing hands. This is what we ask them to do. Let me see your willing hands. It's like, you'd think it would be an easy thing, but when you're in emotion mind and you're angry or upset or scared, or, even my 4-year-old's having a tantrum, right? And I go, let me see your willing hands. It's like, no, 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 no. And that's emotion mind. And so wise mind is saying, all right, I'll put out my willing hands and I'm willing to consider something different. I'm willing to think things through here and to go down a different path that I wasn't going to go down, or that my emotions weren't telling me to go down. So this is our wise mind. I really like, I actually came up with a version of this slide sometime after one of the hurricanes in a few years back. They had that big hurricane in Florida. And I have family down there. And so it was on my mind, and I heard that palm trees, they're like the strongest trees because they can survive these massive winds, and they've been around for a long time, and they've got this really strong core. But the big thing is they're flexible. They can go, they could go any which way without breaking because they're so flexible. And I think that's what wise mind is. It's saying, I've got this strong core and I'm flexible and I can weather the storm, and I can let my emotions come and I can let them go too. So that's wise mind. So a few questions that I come up with when I'm teaching this to people is, well, how do I get into wise mind? How do I stay in wise mind? And how do I get other people to be in wise mind when they're in emotion mind? So that's what I'm going to go through for the rest of this. I'm just going to answer those questions for you. So the first question, how do I get into wise mind? So the big thing is stop. We teach kids, this is actually an acronym that we teach kids, but I'm not going to go into all of that. It's not necessarily important that you learn this, but really what stop says is we need to stop. We need to take a breath. We need to observe how we're feeling inside and out, and then we need to come up with a plan. But really what I think is important for people, if you really want to change the brain like we're talking about, is just visualize that huge stop sign. Put that stop sign right in your mind, at the forefront of your mind, and literally freeze. So if you sense that you are getting into emotion mind, that you are having an emotion that you don't know what to do with and you don't want to feel it. So, embarrassment, shame is such a big one with our kids. Anger, obviously, anxiety, huge one, sadness. And our urges are telling us things like, just fall into that, listen to our emotions, avoid, attack, all of that. We don't have to make any decisions. All we need to do is stop. Okay. And then observe, admit to, if only to yourself, that you are in emotion mind. I actually teach families to start using this language at home. So as awkward as it sounds, I think all of the staff here would tell you we now use this in our everyday language with our families. I know, like, my husband now knows the term emotion mind, and he will use it. And I'm generally pretty happy about that until he says, oh, I think you're an emotion mind, Chelsey. And I'm like, oh, you stop using my DBT against me. That's the thing that makes me the most angry. It's like, I'm not, I wasn't an emotion mind, but I am now. But generally speaking, it's been so helpful for us because when we're in a disagreement, right, we have all sorts of urges, but I think our most common urge is to just keep fighting, just keep fighting, just keep fighting, right? And if one of us walked out of the room, the other one generally would be like, oh, so you're just walking away, right? But really what we need to be doing is walking away. Really what we need to be doing is recognizing that we are in emotion mind, and that continuing the discussion, continuing the conversation isn't going to be useful. So I teach families, and honestly, the families that I hear back from that say, oh yeah, like things are going so much better, they will say, we just start telling each other when we're in emotion mind, and we ask for what we need. And so you don't have to use that term if it's weird, but I think just saying, I need a minute, I need some time to think this through is really, really an effective thing to do. So like I said, I really believe that like at least 90% of the battle is just understanding that we're in emotion mind. The rest of it, I think, is a little bit easier than that. And then the second thing is name your emotion. So not only are you going to say I'm in emotion mind, but see if you can come up with, what am I feeling? That's the observe part of it. I'm feeling really angry, right? Or maybe if you're with your spouse, maybe you're disappointed, maybe you're hurt, right? Maybe you are feeling anxious. If you're with your children, if you're with, admit what is that emotion that you're feeling. The thing about emotions, and the reason that I put this little picture on here of this little guy raising his hand, is emotions just want to be called on. Emotions just want you to say their name. And that really is true. I actually just kind of heard this metaphor and I really like it. An emotion is in your brain going, ooh, 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 listen to me, listen to me. I have something to tell you. I have something to tell you. Please, please, please call on me, call on me. Like I started having flashbacks of like when you had to hold your hand up so long that you were like doing this to hold your hand up. And that's what an emotion will do, is it will hang on for as long as it takes for you to go, yes, anger, right? Yes, anxiety. Yes, fear. What is it that you're trying to tell me? And then just like the kid at school, they're going to go, a lot of the times the kid at school goes, I forgot, right? And sometimes honestly, an emotion will be like, I don't know, maybe it's not that big of a deal, but thanks for recognizing me, So if I'm angry at somebody and I can just say to myself, wow, I'm really angry. I'm really angry. What does that feel like in my body? Where am I experiencing my anger? And maybe some of the reasons why you're feeling angry, much of the time, your emotion's going to go, whew. And you probably will still have the problem that you had, but now you are in wise mind. Now you can manage the problem and have the discussion and make the decisions, because you're not going to do something impulsively that you will later regret. And so I teach kids that call on your emotion. And I think for adults, I can say for myself, being able to step back and really just observe what it is that's going on inside of me has been huge. So that is, yes, the observe skill. Name your emotion. And then what? Skills. So I threw on in the background, these are just some of the skills that we teach here. If you guys are interested in learning skills, DBT is getting kind of big now. And we have resources here at Amberwing as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be that you need to get into therapy to learn these skills. These are great skills for anybody to learn, and I really encourage it. And none of them are particularly mind-blowing, right? None of them are like, oh, I've got this special skill that a scientist came up with and only I can teach you as a therapist. Like, most of them are things that many of us know how to do already. We just now need to do it on purpose and for a reason. So we've got all of these skills here, and I wish I could teach you all of them, but alas, I cannot. So this is where we enter some skills. So I've got 2 skills that I'm going to go over right now for you guys, and I hope that they're useful for you. The first one is distract. So generally, when we are in emotion mind, we don't want to solve the problem. When I am angry, I'm probably not going to come up with the best solution if I'm in emotion mind. And so the best thing to do in a lot of cases is just to get your mind off of it. And this can be useful in so many different scenarios. So I'm just peeking, making sure I'm doing okay on time. So there's actually a really long acronym for different ways that we learn to distract. But I find that the A, the C, and the T are the ones that the kids go back to, that I use a lot, and that I think are the easiest to remember. And so activities, very basic. This is where you're going to do something else, anything else besides think about your problem. So figure out what you like to do. And then, you know what? Honestly, it doesn't even have to be something that you like to do. It can just be, you can go like organize your sock drawer. You can clean, read, bake, listen to music, go for a drive, call a friend, do any of those things, you know, clean. Like right now, my microwave is disgusting. Like I should just go clean my microwave. I think it would get my mind off of it. Honestly, I think I would start thinking about how angry I am that my microwave's so disgusting, but it really would get my mind off of it. The key to this for yourself, and if you're trying to teach this to other people, is you really have to have the plan in place before you actually need it. So you can't wait until you're super duper upset and then go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do this activity. What should I do? The best thing that you can do is, if this is something you want to use, is like have a list on the fridge, or put something on your phone, or find a way so that it's easily accessible to you when you need it in a crisis moment, when you feel like you are going to act on an urge that you don't want to act in, or when you feel like you are just going to make your problem worse. What can you have ready at the gate for you to go? So some of my go-tos is honestly just a shower. Sometimes it's cleaning. It doesn't matter what it is. This is also a skill that is really, really useful. All three of these skills is really, really useful to like stop addiction. So quitting, this is pretty classic for quitting smoking. What they will tell you to do is just kind of pick a realistic time frame. So if you've got a really strong urge to smoke, 5 minutes, and like, even I say don't set a timer, but just go, okay, I'm going to look at the clock right now. It is 3:59. So at 4:04, I will address this problem again. But for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to go do the dishes. For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to play the piano. I'm going to read a book, whatever it is. And then what do you do after the 5 minutes? Do you give in to the urge to smoke? Hopefully the urge has gone down. That's the ultimate goal. But if it hasn't, then you go, okay, 5 more minutes, right? Or 2 more minutes, or whatever it is. And you just keep going and going and going like that until the urge really has gone down. And ultimately you kind of forget about it. And so it's really effective for that. Contribute is just like what it sounds. It's helping someone else out. Not only do you get the benefit of the distraction, but you are also going to get the benefit of whatever positive feedback you get from the person that you helped. So write a letter to somebody. I think I have my kids do this, like go draw a picture for grandma and she'll love it, or even just call grandma. Write a letter, do a chore for somebody else, compliment someone. I mean, I think it's like so easy just to go on social media, if that's not something that puts you in emotion mind, and just say nice stuff about people. You're going to get that positive feedback. It's going to build your relationship with that person, but it's also going to distract from your own stuff, whatever's going on with you. This is contribute to something that, it just helps even if you're not in emotion mind. It helps with your mood. But especially when you're in emotion mind, I think focusing on somebody else can be really helpful. And like I said, you get those positive vibes from doing that. So again, have something ready, have a go-to that you can do rather than wait for it to happen and then try and frantically come up with a plan, because it's probably not going to happen. And then thoughts. Honestly, I don't know. I guess I have a million favorite skills, but this is one of my most favorite skills because it's really effective. So distracting with thoughts is you're just occupying your brain so that it's difficult to focus on your problem. A lot of times kids think they have to think positive thoughts. You can, but you don't have to. All you have to do is just think distracting thoughts. So I have a few favorites. One of the ones that I talk to kids about is count backwards by threes. It's easy because you get to like 100, 97, 94, and then suddenly you're like 91, and then you're like, I don't know. For me, it's hard. It's easy enough that I can do it when I'm in emotion mind, but it's difficult enough that it really does get my emotion down a little bit. Count shapes in the room. Sometimes I'll go, just tell me everything in your space right now that's red. Maybe not red for emotion mind, but maybe blue or something like that. Or I'll have them pick their favorite color. Count the amount of circles that you see in the room right now. One of our favorites that we do here a lot at Amberwing, we do it for mindfulness, but we also just do it as a distraction, is we play the alphabet game. So we'll just pick a topic. My favorite is ice cream flavors. Makes me kind of hungry, but so name an ice cream flavor with every letter of the alphabet. And it's harder than you think. It's easy at first. Like you can come up with a few for A, B, C, and then you get to D and you're like, I don't know. I still don't have a good one for D. So, you can do for kids who are into stuff like sports teams, actors, right? Like bands, you can do any topic and it will get your mind off of it. For especially young kids, sometimes I have a coworker actually who told me she would do this with her daughter. She would just go A, B, and then her daughter who was young would just have to fill in the blank. And that was difficult enough for her young daughter. But it was something that would just kind of get her mind off the problem. So I hope that makes sense. Feel free to ask questions when we're done with this. But it's like when I was saying, this is stuff that we already know, but to be able to mindfully do it on purpose, it's very, very powerful. And it brings that emotion down. And it acknowledges that we say that we teach that an emotion left alone lasts somewhere between 8 seconds and a minute. And we can tolerate any emotion for a minute. And so the distract skill is just about going, I'm not going to think about it. Because if we keep thinking about it, we keep feeling the emotion. But if we get our mind off of it, generally that emotion will go away within a minute, which is great. All right. The second skill that I'm going to teach you is self-soothe. This is our kids, the kids at Amberwing who come through the program. This is the number one. When we ask what's your favorite skill, this is the number one, self-soothe. And it's because it's taking care of yourself. So self-soothe is acknowledging that we still have that little baby inside of us that we had when we were born. And just like a little baby, we are soothed by our senses. So if you think about a baby, right? We soothe a baby by touch with blankets and holding them and cuddling them and, like all of that. Taste, right? We feed them, we give them their little passies. Movement, so that's why we say 6 senses. We add movement. We rock them, and sound. We sing to them, and we have noise machines and sight. Right, we're there. We're a calming presence for them, or we've got those sounds. That biological need doesn't necessarily go away. I wouldn't say it's a biological need as much as it is kind of just a trick. It's a biological trick to get us to calm down. Because when we do these things, when we do things to soothe our 6 senses, we are telling our brain that we are safe, that there is no threat. Because guess what? If there was actually a threat, if I actually needed to run from a bear in the woods, I would not be able to stop and listen to my music. I would not be able to put a soft blankie on me and take some deep breaths, right? So self-soothe, this is one thing. It will change your brain because it lets your brain know that you are safe. So things like what we really recommend is to have a self-soothe kit ready somewhere where you can use it and pick, for me, I have tea, I have sparkling water. That's my taste. A lot of kids like gum or things, suckers, things like that. A movement, a lot of people love hammocks. Some people really just rock. I like swinging a tennis racket or swimming. Sight, have some pictures in your box that you like. YouTube has some fabulous, really soothing videos, like rain falling, waterfalls. I just did one with kids that was like surfers. So you can really use that. Smell, for me, it's cinnamon, peppermint, my grandma's perfume, just things that calm you to your core. Touch, obviously, blankets. Sometimes it's just, for me, like on a cold day, it's just enough for me to put on like a cozy sweatshirt and like a really soft, cozy sweatshirt and just take care of myself, right? Baby yourself for a little bit and do it on purpose. So I really recommend having that SelfSoothe kit. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you is, how do I help someone else get into Wise Mind? And I really think that this is like a superpower if you can do this. So if you're ready for it, if someone is in emotion mind or reasonable mind, but mostly we're talking about emotion mind here, the quickest way that you can help them is to validate them. Okay. So I know this is cliche. We hear this a lot, but I am here to tell you, like, this is my soapbox. If I could do a TED Talk, which I guess I kind of am right now, it would be on the power of validation. How powerful is validation? So validation is just simply recognizing or affirming that a person or their feelings or their opinions are valid or worthwhile. Okay. It's not agreeing with somebody. It's not even saying that what they're doing is okay, right? So if somebody's yelling at me, if somebody's making fun of me, if somebody's, right, all of those things, it's not okay. And yet, if I can find their kernel of truth somewhere in them, where is that emotion coming from? And I can let them know that, hey, your emotion is okay, right? It's not okay that you yell at me, right? I say this to my kids, but it's absolutely okay for you to be angry. Absolutely 100% always okay for you to be angry. And even if I don't agree with somebody's opinion, if I can find how they got there, often they're going to be more likely to listen to my opinion, and it's going to calm them down. Validation is a trick. I think it's an art. It's not something that we do naturally. And it takes practice. And so some of the things, some of the phrases that I really recommend saying is, wow, you must be feeling you must be feeling a really intense emotion to do something that extreme. You must have been really struggling if that's what you went to. Or, I'm not totally agreeing with you, but I want to understand. I want to understand. I'm here to listen. And I think the other thing is, it's not saying it'll be okay or bringing up, what you went through in the past. It's saying, I get it. And for you, your pain is your pain. And I may not totally understand that, but it seems like you're really struggling right now, right? A lot of times that helps the fire alarm in the other person's brain turn off, because their emotion is then saying, wow, somebody hears me. I don't need to be as loud anymore. I don't need to be as upset. My emotion doesn't need to be as big because somebody hears me. And so, yes, this applies to other people. It also applies to yourself. Validate yourself. Let yourself know that what you're feeling, whatever you're feeling, is okay. I always tell parents, you can't go wrong with validating an emotion, right? I haven't found really a good exception to that rule. I think sometimes you can go wrong validating a behavior. So, there are obviously behaviors that our kids do, our spouses do, our coworkers do, that aren't okay. And we're not here to say, oh yeah, that was fine that you did that. It's saying, what was at the heart of that? Let me try and understand what's at the heart of that. And it's very, very powerful. It's hard to do, especially if you are also an emotion mind. And that's where I say, don't even go for the validation, just go for the break first. But when you come back to it, and even while you're kind of processing and thinking about it, try and understand where the other person is coming from, because likely that's going to help your emotion go down, and ultimately it's going to help their emotion go down too. Does that make sense? All right. So that's what I have. And I'm happy that I got through that in the amount of time that I did, because generally I talk a little bit too much. But that also tells me that I may have left something out or gone over something too fast. So I would certainly welcome questions.
If anyone has a question, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask. Otherwise, you can enter it into the chat and we will read it to Chelsey.
Chelsey, this is Joan Oswald at the Miller-Dwan Foundation. I spotted the that little saying on one of the slides that was surf the urge. What is that?
Yeah. So surfing the urge is recognizing kind of what I was saying about an emotion or an urge lasting just a very brief amount of time. It's understanding that, if I have an urge, for instance, to, like we talked about, people who are quitting smoking, right? That urge is going to last a very brief period of time. Doesn't mean it's not going to come back, but it's going to be really quick. And so understanding in my brain that it's going to go away, and then just kind of noticing the wave of it, the crest of it. Okay, where is it the most intense? What's your urge at right now? Is it a 9 out of 10? Or is it more like a 4? You can handle a 4. And then knowing that, oh yeah, it's going down. So sometimes we call it riding the wave, surfing the urge. And actually it's become one of my other favorite skills, because I really think it's powerful to help kids understand that an emotion isn't permanent. It feels like it is in the moment, but emotions are very temporary, and they're very separate from who we are as people. And they're also very separate than our thoughts. And the other thing that a lot of times our emotions lie to us. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes our emotions are lying to us and they're telling us things that aren't true. And so surfing the urge is just saying, I'm just going to let this emotion wash over me right now, or ride on top of it like a wave. And then I'm going to let it go. Does that make sense, Joan?
Yeah, I like it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chelsey, there's a question in chat that I'll read.
Okay.
Any ideas how to handle someone in their mid-20s who is rather angry and blaming others for decisions that they have made in their life but may not have turned out how they wanted, usually their parents? They need to move on and stop bringing up these things and move forward.
Yeah, without knowing the entire situation, I don't know that I can give great advice. But in general, I think if somebody is bringing something up over and over and over again and blaming somebody else, it's important to recognize that that is their truth, even if it's not your truth. And sometimes it can be enough, and maybe not enough, but a good step in the right direction to validate and acknowledge, all right, I get it. You've got a lot of blame for me. I don't know. I'm assuming maybe you are the parent who asked. I don't even know who asked that, but just kind of acknowledging that, okay, I get it. You blame me for a lot of things. And even though I don't totally agree, that must be painful to feel that way. It must be painful to feel like your parents kind of made these mistakes, whatever they might be. I think that's step number 1. Step number 2, it really just depends. It depends. Do we need to look at, are we enabling the person by, kind of not allowing them to be off on their own? Is there, what are they getting out of their behavior? And that's a big question, and it really is individualized. But generally, I would really start with trying to put yourself in their shoes. We call it dialectical thinking, and understand that everybody has their own truth. You have your own truth. That person also has their own truth. And until we really come over to their side and see it and go, okay, I get it. We talk about this a lot with kids who hate school, and they won't do their schoolwork. They don't see it as important. And we're sitting here being like, it's important, it's important, it's important. And the only reason we know that is because of our life experience. We see either in ourselves or other people the consequences of not taking school seriously. They don't see that. They haven't lived through that. So it's not their truth. It's not their reality. Their reality is something else. we can change their reality by like not letting them play video games until they get their schoolwork done, right? But they're not going to actually probably ever think school is important until they can actually see how that impacts their life. And it sounds like with this person, their reality is different than yours or than the parents because they have a different experience. They've lived something different than that. Otherwise, I would say some family therapy is always good.
Great. Mary has a question as well. Does this work as well with adults as it does with children, say in a meeting setting?
Yeah, I don't know which specific part, Mary, you can let me know which specific part, but what I should tell you guys is that DBT was actually designed for adults, and has only within the last 15 years or so been researched as much with kids, shown to be as effective. But DBT goes back to like the 70s with it being effective in adults. And so yes, hugely effective in like work situations, in meetings. And like, it's kind of like this trick that you don't even know that you're doing, or the other person doesn't know you're doing. But if you can just be like, oh yeah, like I get where you're coming from. And then like wait a couple seconds and be like, what do you think about this? And then you can say your actual opinion. But the fact that you stopped and paused and really made a concerted effort to hear what they're saying, great. If you, Mary, were talking about some of the other skills like distracting, yes, I use the distract skill quite frequently in meetings. Not like with patients, but like those meetings where you're getting a little frustrated and you can't say anything, and suddenly I'm counting the squares in the room, or I'm coming up with ideas for what I'm going to do this weekend, right? Like it gets me through the meeting. So yeah.
Lori has a question. What are some good resources to learn more about DBT?
Yeah, so anything that comes, so the creator of DBT's name is Marsha Linehan. Anything that comes from Marsha Linehan is good stuff. So she's got some workbooks that are very reader friendly. I think her actual, I would not recommend that you read her. I wouldn't say I don't recommend it, but her actual manual is really, really dry and technical, and it's a lot. But her, if you're really interested in learning skills, I would really go to the manual. We also have some classes. We have a communities and caregivers class at Amberwing that is open to the community. Generally, it's attended by parents of our students, but we've had lots of people from the community attend that as well, and it teaches the skills the way we teach it to the kids. So I would start there. There's a lot online, but honestly, some of it's not as good as others. But there is a lot. There's resources. We also, like Tracy mentioned, we've got a video series that we are slowly but surely getting out there that goes through all of the skills. So I think we have about 5 of them out there right now. So you can YouTube that. I think if you search either Miller-Dwan Foundation or Amberwing or DBT, you'll probably find them.
Okay. Well, when Carrie sends a wrap-up email tomorrow morning, she can include the link to find those DBT videos, and then also information about the community and caregivers class that Amberwing offers if people are interested. So it looks like we have a couple more questions. Pam is asking, when validating, did you mention not to say you will be okay?
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned that, but yeah, that is probably good. Just let it, I mean, I think there's something to helping people understand that their emotions are temporary. Like, I think about parents with kids who are having panic attacks, letting them know, this will pass, right? This is temporary. But I think, yeah, sometimes you will be okay is invalidating, especially to somebody who's experiencing something like grief or even if they're angry at you, like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. they don't really feel like it's going to be okay. That's not their truth. And so there's a great Brene Brown. I don't know if you guys have heard of Brene Brown, but there's this YouTube video that she does, and it's like a cartoon. She talks about validation and empathy. It's actually about empathy, but she's got this visual of like a person in a deep hole. And the person at the top who's feeling some sympathy goes, hey, you want a sandwich down there? You want a sandwich? What do you need down there, right? The person who can really validate crawls down the ladder into the hole with the person and goes, wow, I haven't experienced this, but like, I'm down here with you right now. You're not alone. And so I think it's very powerful. So we're not trying to, that's the other thing about validation. It's not fixing. Don't fix things. My husband's also working on that one. He was actually thinking about attending this because I'm very open about the fact that I like throw him under the bus when I do these talks. He's good at it now, though.
Another question from Elizabeth. How do you advise parents of older teens regarding not wanting to do schoolwork, but taking away limiting electronics infuriates the teen? Family therapy with a smiley face.
I mean, so we talk, so the B in DBT stands for behavioral. And so we do have a strong belief that people do the things that they do because of rewards and consequences. And I do teach some, sometimes depending on the situation, it's like, sometimes you might want to limit electronics if they're not getting their schoolwork done. My best tip for that is keep consequences really short term. And if you can, turn it around into a reinforcement rather than you're taking it away. So what I will do is I will tell the parents, all right, take the phone, just take the phone away. Say, nope, we don't get the phone right now. But if they do like an hour of homework every night, right? So if it's Tuesday night or whatever, I don't know, it's Thursday. If it's Thursday night, and if you want them to do an hour of homework and you can see that they've produced an hour's worth of homework, then you go, all right, here's your phone, have it the rest of the night. And you can have it, tomorrow at school or whatever. And then when they get home from school, they have to give you back their phone and they get it back when they get their schoolwork done. If they don't do it until 9 o'clock at night and you limit screen time for bedtime, then they don't get it, right? Because they also don't recommend having kids have their phones at night, but that's another story. For the most part, some kids can handle that. But if you keep it short term and you say, all right, we'll try again tomorrow, right? So it's not saying you're grounded for 3 weeks from your phone. It's saying we will try again tomorrow. Take away the fight, take away the nagging, just go, nope, if you want your phone, you know what you need to do. An hour's worth of schoolwork. So that's generally what I recommend is really short-term rewards and consequences rather than like when you punish a kid, you end up punishing yourself for the long term. I worked with a family who like the mom grounded the kid for the whole summer and it was like June 15th and she was like, I don't know what I was thinking, because she's going nuts with this kid. And then you get, what I often hear from parents is I've taken everything away. What do I do now? And I'm like, you start giving it back, right? They start earning it back. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but yeah, maybe family therapy too. But I would really look at it behaviorally and figure out what it is that they need, what it is, maybe not need, what it is that they want and how you can get them to work for it. And I will also say the other thing I want to throw in with that is the phone might be reinforcing, but what is also reinforcing is when you give them the phone, you go, hey, nice job with that. Thank you for doing your homework without a fight. I'm proud of you. And I think this is going to pay off in the long run. Because whether or not they admit it, a teen still benefits from your praise and your reinforcement. So I always pair that.
Great. Chelsey, I have a question actually.
All right, Tracy, throw it at me.
More of a thought to see if I'm thinking about this correctly. So thinking about like some of those distraction techniques and like the act part of distract.
Yeah.
I would have to imagine that exercise is probably a really good distraction because then you're getting rid of some of that physical angst that you have in your body, right?
Yes, for sure. Exercise falls under like at least 5 different skills that I can think of. And along with the distract, we have a skill, it's called our tip skill, but in one part of our tip skill is actually sticking our face in ice water. So there's a quick skill for you. If you're in emotion mind, stick your face in ice water. It will bring down your heart rate. It's a reflex. It will work. But also exercise, if you are in emotion mind and you have intense exercise, not only will it get your mind off of it, but it will bring your heart rate up. It will tire you out. And when you're done, it will bring your heart rate back all the way down. It's not going to bring it back to where you were when you were in emotion mind. It's going to bring it all the way down. And it's going to let those muscles kind of tense, but then also come back down to that release relaxation phase. So yes, and also exercise, we just think is really great in preventing the crisis moments. It's part of our skill where we take care of our body, because taking care of our body is so important in preventing emotion mind. So good point, Tracy. And yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have just a couple more minutes. If anyone else has a question, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in chat. And Chelsey, any last minute thoughts before we end tonight?
No, I'm just so glad to see people interested in thinking about mental health, and hopefully you guys can take this and it improves not only your own life, but relationships and people you care about. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much.
And I think you'll like the comment that just came through. It said, Krista said, great session. Can we have another webinar to continue this?
That would be nice. Although my special request is, can we please pick a different photo for me? That would be my only, because my emotion mind moment was when I heard that photo of me was in the Duluth News Tribune. It did not make me. That was emotion mind, right, Joan? Joan knows.
We can take care of that. I hear you. I understand how you might be feeling about that.
Joan wasn't validating to me at all, by the way. But yes,
Chelsey,
thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, this was absolutely fabulous. I know everyone on the Miller-Dwan Foundation team went through the DBT skills training a while ago, but it was good to have a little refresher, because I think we all end up in emotion mind at times and need a little reminder on how to bring yourself back to wise mind. So again, thank you. Carrie Jo from our office will be sending out the recording or the link to the recording tomorrow, along with some of the other information that we talked about. And if you need more information, please feel free to connect with us at Miller-Dwan Foundation or at Amberwing. And we will hope to see you for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was good. Thanks.